The clinking of glasses usually signals celebration, a joyous symphony of shared moments and well wishes. For me, however, that particular night, it was the chilling, metallic sound of a cold, calculated insult. We were gathered at my wife Sarah's family dinner, a seemingly innocuous occasion meant to celebrate her younger sister's year graduation. The dining room, usually a place of warmth and boisterous laughter, felt strangely charged, though I couldn't quite pinpoint why at first. Everything appeared normal. The flickering candlelight on the polished mahogany table, the aroma of roasted lamb, the gentle hum of polite conversation. I was engaged in a discussion about my profession work, feeling a comfortable sense of belonging, a feeling I had cultivated over 2 decades of marriage to Sarah and integration into her family. Then the moment arrived. Sarah's father, a man whose stern but fair demeanor I had always respected, rose from his seat at the head of the table. He cleared his throat, commanding the room's attention. A smile, one I had seen countless times, spread across his face. But tonight it held an unsettling edge. He raised his glass, a crystal flute catching the light. "A toast," he announced, his voice booming with an almost theatrical resonance, to David. My grip on my own glass, filled with sparkling cider, tightened imperceptibly. David? The name hung in the air, a forgotten echo from a distant past. Sarah's ex-boyfriend, her father continued, his gaze sweeping across the room, lingering for a fraction too long on his daughter. The man who truly understood her, even back then. My hand, poised to join the celebratory clink, froze midair. The words resonated, each syllable a deliberate, painful jab. David, a figure from Sarah's past I hadn't seen or even thought about, in over 20 years, stood just feet away, a smug, knowing smirk playing on his lips. He was older, of course, but the arrogance in his posture was unmistakable. Sarah, seated beside me, offered a small, awkward smile, her eyes darting away from mine, a telltale sign of her discomfort or perhaps complicity, the room oblivious. To the silent earthquake rumbling beneath my feet, erupted in polite applause and murmurs of agreement. "Oh, David, yes, such a charmer," I heard Sarah's aunt coo. Always knew how to make Sarah laugh. My vision blurred, the candlelight around the table fracturing into dizzying streaks. It wasn't merely a toast to an old flame. It was a public declaration, a deliberate slight delivered with chilling precision. They weren't just honoring David. They were subtly, meticulously erasing me from the narrative of Sarah's life, implying a deeper, more profound connection that transcended our shared history. The air, once filled with the warmth of family, thickened with unspoken histories, with secrets and resentments I hadn't known existed. A knot of icy dread formed in my stomach, tightening with each passing second. This wasn't a family dinner. It felt like a tribunal, and I was the accused, found guilty of simply existing. The casual ease with which they resurrected this ghost, this real soulmate, was a betrayal far deeper than any single act. It was a revelation of a long-held sentiment, a quiet, collective dismissal of my place. For 25 years, a dedicated profession in the heart of city, had believed with every fiber of my being that Sarah and I had meticulously constructed an unshakable life. Our marriage wasn't just a partnership. It was the very bedrock of my existence. We had navigated the intricate labyrinth of raising our children, from their first steps to their college graduations, celebrating every milestone with a shared sense of accomplishment and pride. Anniversaries weren't merely dates on a calendar. They were sacred rituals, marked by quiet dinners, exchanged gifts, and heartfelt reflections on the journey we had embarked upon together. Our dreams for a tranquil retirement, a serene period of peace and shared hobbies, were not vague aspirations, but concrete plans, discussed over morning coffee and evening walks. We envisioned a small cottage by the coast, long, leisurely trips. Abroad, perhaps even taking up painting or learning a new language together. Our house, a comfortable, lived-in space filled with memories, our predictable routines, and the unspoken language of our shared dreams, these were the unwavering anchors of my existence. I trusted her implicitly, a trust so profound it felt like an extension of my own self, a bond forged and reinforced over a quarter century of unwavering loyalty and mutual respect. Then, imperceptibly at first, the small changes began to ripple through the placid surface of our life. Her phone, once an open book, became a locked vault, always placed face down on tables, always clutched tightly in her hand. If I entered a room while she was on a call, her voice would drop to a whisper, or she would abruptly end the conversation. With a hurried, "I'll call you back." I noticed her deleting call logs and messages more frequently, a habit I initially dismissed as an attempt to declutter, a quirk of her increasingly busy schedule. Casual comments about girls' nights morphed into hurried exits and vague explanations, lacking the usual enthusiastic recounting of their escapades upon her return. "Oh, just dinner with the old gang," she'd say, or "we just chatted about work, nothing exciting." I dismissed them as harmless, telling myself that Sarah, like anyone, simply needed her space, her own circle of friends, a respite from the demands of our shared life. After all, I had my golf buddies, my own professional commitments. It seemed only fair, yet, despite my conscious efforts to rationalize these shifts, a persistent, nagging whisper began to echo in the quiet corners of my mind. It wasn't a loud accusation, but a subtle, unsettling discord in the harmony of our daily lives. The way she'd flinch if I reached for her phone, the sudden tension in her shoulders when a specific notification chimed, these fleeting moments chipped away at my certainty. I tried to ignore the growing unease, to squash the burgeoning doubt, reminding myself of our history, our deep connection. I didn't want to be the suspicious husband, the one who questioned everything. But the whisper persisted, a low, insistent hum beneath the surface of my consciousness, making me feel subtly off-kilter, as if the ground beneath my feet was no longer as solid as it once was. The first real crack in the facade appeared one lazy Saturday afternoon. I was tidying up the old den, a room we rarely used, when I stumbled upon a dusty photo album tucked away on a forgotten shelf. It was one of those old, bulky ones with sticky pages, filled with faded snapshots from our college days, even before we met. A wave of nostalgia washed over me, and I settled onto the worn armchair, flipping through the pages, smiling at the awkward hairstyles and youthful exuberance. Then, deep within the album, I found a section dedicated entirely to Sarah's preemie life. And there he was, David. Pictures of them from college, not just casual acquaintances, but cozy, intimate. They were holding hands in a park, laughing with their heads thrown back, sharing a single ice cream cone, their eyes locked in a gaze that spoke of a profound, unspoken connection. It wasn't just the physical closeness. It was the raw, undeniable affection, the way their bodies leaned into each other, the secret smiles they exchanged. It was a depth of feeling I hadn't seen in Sarah's eyes in years, not even when she looked at me. A cold dread spread through me, chilling me to the bone. Just as I was staring at a particularly tender shot of them by a campus fountain, Sarah walked in, her footsteps light, her eyes immediately fixated on the album in my hands. Her casual demeanor vanished instantly, replaced by a sudden, almost violent possessiveness. She snatched the album from my grasp with a speed that startled me, her movements jerky and uncharacteristic. "Just old memories," she insisted, her voice unusually sharp, a defensive edge I hadn't heard before. She clutched the album to her chest, her body language screaming a secret. The incident left a lingering, bitter taste. I couldn't shake the image of them or the unsettling intensity of her reaction. It was the first undeniable moment of doubt that couldn't be easily rationalized away. A stark contrast to the casual dismissal I had offered for her phone habits and girls' trips. The whisper in my mind grew louder, more insistent, no longer. A hum, but a distinct, unsettling voice. The true unraveling, however, came weeks later on a Monday and Tuesday evening. My own tablet was charging, and I needed to quickly look up a news article. Sarah's tablet was on the kitchen counter. A small, almost imperceptible tremor ran through my hand as I picked it up. A part of me screamed to stop, to respect her privacy, to cling to the remnants of trust. But the insistent voice, fueled by the photo album incident and the accumulating small changes, was now a roar. I had to know. I opened it, navigating to what appeared to be a standard recipe book app. The icon was innocent enough, a whisk and a chef's hat. But something felt off. The app didn't open to recipes. Instead, after a brief loading screen, it revealed a secure messaging platform. A hidden portal to a life I knew nothing about. My heart pounded against my ribs, each beat a painful thud. My breath hitched in my throat as I scrolled through the conversations. Fragments of messages, affectionate pet names I'd never heard her use for me, intimate jokes, and detailed plans for secret rendezvous filled the screen. Can't wait for our weekend in another city, one message read, dated the same weekend she'd claimed to be on a girls' trip. Another, my love, the profession deal is almost done, then we'll be free. The words swam before my eyes, each one a fresh stab. The sheer volume of messages, spanning months, perhaps even years, spoke of a deep, long-standing affair. It wasn't a momentary lapse. It was a parallel life, meticulously constructed behind my back, and then the final, devastating confirmation. The sender's name, prominently displayed at the top of the chat window. David. The same David. The man they had just toasted at dinner. The man whose presence had sent a shiver down my spine. The man her father had declared truly understood. Her. The pieces of the puzzle clicked into place with a sickening thud. The insulting toast wasn't just a casual slight. It was a brazen, public affirmation of a secret relationship, a cruel mockery of our marriage, delivered right in front of me. My world, once solid and predictable, didn't just crumble. It disintegrated into dust beneath my feet, revealing a chasm of betrayal so profound, so meticulously planned, that I hadn't even dared to imagine its existence. The air left my lungs, leaving me hollowed out, staring at the screen, the digital evidence of my shattered reality. The trust, once an unyielding fortress, was now nothing but scattered rubble. The discovery hit me with a force that transcended mere emotional pain. It was a visceral, physical blow that knocked the wind out of me. For a long moment, I simply stood there, tablet in hand, the digital evidence of Sarah's betrayal burning into my retinas. The initial shock quickly gave way to a searing, all-consuming rage. It wasn't the kind of rage that erupted in shouts or broken objects. It was a silent, internal inferno that scorched every corner of my being. My hands trembled, not with fear, but with a raw, primal urge to confront, to demand answers, to shatter the illusion that had been my life. Yet, almost as quickly as it ignited, that explosive anger settled, congealing into a cold, unnerving calm. It was a stillness more terrifying than any outburst, a quiet resolve born from profound hurt. Sleep became a forgotten luxury. My nights were endless stretches of darkness, each minute consumed by the relentless replay of images, Sarah's secretive smiles, David's smug smirk, the words on the hidden messaging app. Every memory of our shared past, every tender moment, every whispered promise now felt tainted, recontextualized by this devastating truth. Was it all a lie? Had I been living in a carefully constructed facade for years, perhaps even decades? The questions gnawed at me, relentless and unforgiving. My mind, once sharp and focused in my profession, became a chaotic tangle of suspicion and despair. I'd stare blankly at reports, unable to process information, my colleagues noticing my distant demeanor. When friends called, concerned by my sudden quietness, I'd offer vague reassurances, a hollow shell of my former self. Just a bit under the weather, I'd mumble, or work's been demanding. The truth was too monstrous, too humiliating to articulate. Sarah, meanwhile, remained utterly oblivious, or perhaps masterfully pretended to be. She continued her girls' trips, her hushed phone calls, her casual mentions of David as a mutual friend or a business associate. Her composure was a stark contrast to my internal turmoil, a chilling testament to her deception. The turning point arrived not in a dramatic flash, but in a slow, agonizing realization. One morning, as I stared at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, I saw not just a broken man, but a man who was being systematically dismantled. The lines etched around my eyes weren't just from sleepless nights. They were the visible marks of a life being stolen piece by piece. It wasn't enough for them to have an affair. They were actively plotting my financial ruin. The joint investment David and Sarah had discussed in their messages wasn't some innocent venture. It was a carefully orchestrated scheme to siphon funds from our shared retirement savings, the very nest egg we had diligently built for our golden years. This wasn't just about emotional betrayal. It was about outright fraud. My wife wasn't simply cheating. She was systematically dismantling our entire financial future, leaving me vulnerable and exposed in my later years. The thought ignited a different kind of fire within me, a cold, calculating resolve. This wasn't about vengeance born of fleeting anger. It was about justice delivered with surgical precision. My revenge wouldn't be loud or impulsive. There would be no shouting matches, no dramatic confrontations that would only serve to satisfy their twisted sense of superiority. Instead, it would be a meticulous, devastatingly silent operation. I would gather every shred of evidence, build an irrefutable case, and then, at the opportune moment, I would unleash a truth that would shatter their carefully constructed world. This wasn't just about exposing their affair. It was about exposing their greed, their deceit, their utter disregard for my well-being. They saw me as a means to an end, a convenient source of funds to fuel their illicit future. I would turn that perception on its head. The evidence gathering began with a quiet intensity. I researched covert listening devices, choosing models that were discreet and effective. One evening, while Sarah was out on another girls' night, I carefully installed a tiny recorder in the study, a room where she often took her hushed calls. The device was almost invisible, tucked away behind a stack of old books. I also contacted a digital forensic expert, a former colleague from my profession field, who specialized in data recovery and analysis. I explained my situation in vague terms, citing suspicious financial activity and potential fraud, omitting the personal details of the affair. He understood the need for discretion and began examining a backup of Sarah's computer hard drive. A backup I had quietly made weeks prior, almost instinctively. The information that began to trickle in, then pour, was chilling. The listening device captured snippets of conversations between Sarah and David, not just romantic whispers, but detailed discussions about their financial maneuvers. I heard them gloating about how easy it was to transfer funds, how I was too trusting to ever suspect. The digital forensic expert uncovered years of hidden transactions, shell accounts, and clandestine meetings disguised as business trips. He found encrypted files containing spreadsheets outlining their financial projections, their plans to buy a new property, and even detailed budgets for their future life together, all funded by what they considered our money, but what was. In essence, my retirement, perhaps the most insidious discovery, was a series of chilling conversations where they discussed how to manage my reaction once I inevitably discovered their affair. They had concocted a narrative, a pre-planned story to paint me as the emotionally unstable one, prone to irrational outbursts, someone whose accusations could easily be dismissed as the ramblings of a jealous, aging husband who'll probably just drink himself into a stupor. David had laughed in one recording, and then we can say he's imagining things. Sarah had agreed, her voice devoid of any remorse. This wasn't just infidelity. It was a calculated psychological assault designed to undermine my credibility and leave me isolated. Their plot wasn't just about a secret romance. It was a comprehensive scheme of fraud, manipulation, and emotional abuse. The deeper I dug, the clearer their financial predation became. They weren't just taking a little, they were systematically draining our joint accounts, moving substantial sums into David's new profession ventures, which, as I discovered, were little more than fronts for their illicit gains. My retirement funds, meticulously saved over decades, were being siphoned off, leaving me with a rapidly dwindling balance. The empty nest we had planned for was slowly being emptied of its financial security, replaced by a looming void. They saw me not as a husband, a partner, or even a person, but as a resource to be exploited, a means to an end for their luxurious future. The realization solidified my resolve. My revenge wouldn't be loud. It would be devastatingly silent. A meticulously executed plan that would expose their true nature and leave them with nothing but the consequences of their own avarice. Every piece of evidence I gathered, every hidden transaction I uncovered, every chilling conversation I heard, fueled my determination to ensure that their carefully constructed house of cards would come crashing down, not with a bang, but with a quiet, undeniable implosion. The calm I felt was not peace, but the quiet hum of a perfectly calibrated machine, ready to execute its purpose. Weeks later, the moment I had meticulously prepared for finally arrived. It was another family dinner at Sarah's parents' sprawling estate, a place that once represented warmth and belonging, now tainted by the chilling knowledge I possessed. This gathering, however, held an even greater significance than the last. It was ostensibly to announce David's new partnership in a prestigious profession firm, a firm I now knew Sarah had subtly invested in, not with her own money, but with substantial funds illicitly siphoned from our joint accounts, from our hard-earned retirement savings. The very air in the lavish dining room felt thick with a false sense of triumph, an almost palpable smugness radiating from Sarah and David, who sat side by side, bathed in the admiring gazes of her family.